Welcome to the Photography Opinion Podcast. We discuss all things photo, video, and camera related. I'm Ben Lucas.
And I'm Stuart Marlantis.
And this is Photo Op. Hello, Stuart. How are you doing?
Hey, doing well. What are we talking about today?
So, today we want to talk about G.A.S. And no, it's not because I had Chipotle. G.A.S, G.A.S, stands for Gear Acquisition Syndrome.
Something we all suffer from at one point or another.
So, Gear Acquisition Syndrome is most notably identified by when you just buy stuff and you buy more stuff. And when you get money in, if someone paid you $500, you turn around and you spend that $500 on more stuff. So there's always a newer camera with more megapixels. You don't need that many megapixels. We did a video on that already.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, you are getting the newest light with the best recycle time just because, you know, you already have lights, but it's new, it's shiny. New shiny toys, interesting gear, wireless triggers. There's a whole realm of fun and interesting things that we can waste our money on.
I've never done that.
No, definitely never done that. Raise your hand if you've never done that. Oh, right. That doesn't work on podcast form. You can't make jokes like that.
Nobody raised their hand.
No one raised their hand. We have all done that. We have all been there. I definitely know that when I started out, I would charge the amount of... I had no idea what to charge. So when I first started out, I would charge the amount of money that it would take for me to buy the thing that I thought would let me do the thing. So as a for instance, my very first wedding, what I charged them was $1,300 because that was the cost of my 2.8 70-200. So that was the only way that I could get telephoto and low light and shoot that wedding. So that's what I charged them. My first music video, I charged $500 because that was the cost of a video slider. So yeah, I know we all have examples. We've all been there.
And starting out, that's a pretty valid strategy. You can build your portfolio and build your gear when you have nothing.
Absolutely. And now I have tens of thousands of dollars worth of stuff, and that didn't just happen overnight. That is nearly a decade now of accumulation. But I do have a specific trigger for this episode today that I wanted to talk about. So my friend David, names have been changed to protect the innocent. So my friend David bought a new lens and he posted on social media about it. And he said, I just wanted to thank you to everyone who has helped me fund my journey. So my friend David, he is not a full-time photographer. He is a very good photographer, but he is I wouldn't say amateur because he's really good at it. He's an enthusiast. He's very excited about it, but it is not his full-time profession. Yeah. So David said, I wanted to thank everyone who basically helped me fund this journey and be able to build this out. And he was just announcing that he got a new piece of kit. And one of the things that he said in his post is, I buy props, equipments, rentals, even proper studio space, and all of you, thanks to all of you, it's how I've been able to keep in the black for as long as I have. My latest investment is this new lens. It's going to be great for XYZ. Thank you, everyone. It's a very normal social media thing to post, right? Mm-hmm. And in the comment section, that dirty comment section.
Don't read the comments.
Yeah,
will.
we read all the comments, but if you're doing this at home, don't read the comments, especially not on YouTube.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Yeah, so someone commented, someone named Scott said, wait, you're in the black? How do you do that? Looking at the $40,000 worth of credit card debt since going full time. And David said, well, I only pay with the money I have. And Scott said, not an option when you're in it full time. And, well, that reply, that's a bit triggering and a bit angering, and that's kind of the the crux of why I wanted to talk about this today.
Angering and triggering. I take it that you don't agree with that comment, Ben.
No, I don't. Personal philosophies aside, if you have a good business and you have a good business plan and you need to get a business loan for XYZ reason, that is a valid way to go about it. My personal belief is that, especially for photographers, because nothing is certain, bootstrapping is the best way to go. Only spend the money that you have. I think the other thing about gear acquisition syndrome, though, is this person, Scott, probably believes that he has to have the studio, he has to have the pro photo set of lights, he has to have, the newest camera with the most frames per second and the most megapixels. It reminds me of that clip from Veep about the 1DX, which I'll find a hacked version of it somewhere and put it in the comments so all of you can watch what I'm talking about. You know the one I'm talking about, right?
I do. It's a good one. Yeah, there's a trap that you can fall into with this, where you see a new shiny piece of gear and you say to yourself, well, think of all the things I could do with that gear that I can't do right now. But really, you really couldn't do what is limiting you that gear could actually solve?
It's true. And I do think there's something to be said that sometimes the gear legitimately is the limiting factor. But
Sometimes
99% of the time, you're not there yet.
Yeah. Sometimes that's the case. Like you said with the lens earlier, if you don't have a fast telephoto lens, you can't get the photos that a fast telephoto lens would produce.
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
just how it is.
Before that, I had a kit lens that only went, I think, out to like 120, and it could only shoot at 6.3. And I was shooting on a Canon Rebel, which only looked good up to ISO 800.
Hey, you got to start somewhere.
So that was legitimately a situation where I needed to get, what is that, another like 3 or 4 stops by upgrading my camera and upgrading my lens, or I could not shoot this genre of photography that takes place in a dark chapel.
Yeah, there was no way around that. There was a wall, and you had to cross that wall somehow, and that's just how it was.
But I really think that most photographers are not making the most of the things that they already have. And so they're not actually at a point where they have to spend the money.
I agree. Gear, especially gear right now, is a lot more powerful than I think people give it credit for. I mean, sure, lower noise, faster lenses to some degree, like that's all really nice. And if you have the work coming in, if you really need that, if you have a job that requires that, then yeah, maybe that's a necessity. But especially if you're starting out, or if you're earlier in your career, I think probably working on skills with the gear you have is a little bit more important than buying some new shiny thing. So I see buying a new piece of gear as a process, or at the very least a thought process for whether at the end of the day you should plonk down the money and buy that piece of gear. And I think that starts with does it give me the ability to do something that I couldn't beforehand? I think that's where I begin with these kind of thoughts.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I would also take it another step further. Not only does it allow me to do something that I wasn't doing before, but can I get paid to do that thing that I wasn't doing before? Because if you're a doctor or a lawyer, then spend your money. This episode is not for you. But if you are legitimately trying to go full time with this, don't buy that 400 millimeter wildlife photography lens for your camping trips and thinking that, I'm just going to sell a bunch of pictures of these birds. If you're
Mhm.
not already in with art galleries or magazines or someone who's going to be paying you for that kind of photography, then that's not an investment that you'll be getting back.
Yeah, if you're just doing something for fun, whether you're high high tier hobbyist like the doctor or the lawyer, or maybe you are a pro but you just want to do something for fun, like those Laowa probe lenses that I really want for fun, but I have no
Don't get me
actual paid job
started.
for.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's one that tempts me every single time they go on sale. I really want that weird needle macro lens. That
Yeah.
thing's fantastic and strange.
Yeah, can I do shots that thing can accomplish any other way? No. Do I have a job that will pay me to use it? Right now, sadly not.
But
So
if you would like to hire us to do some very odd macro stuff, email us and we'll give you a great deal so we can buy that lens.
please let us know. Please. Can somebody pay you to use this piece of equipment? Do you have a job, or ideally jobs, continuing jobs, to use this piece of equipment? And does it give you a capability that you don't have otherwise?
So some of the things I'm just thinking back through my history of buying stuff,
Hmm.
and some of the gear was it was gas induced. It was, ooh, this is gonna be fun. I'm gonna do it, and so I mentioned buying video dollies for music videos. The other thing that I have figured out was in kind of the range and area that I was in, all the musicians were super cheap. And so $500 was literally capped out the most anyone was willing to spend on that, when actually doing a music video costs much, much more than that.
Oh, way more.
The only reason I was charging so little was because that was the cost of the gear that I wanted for that shoot. But I used to actually write tutorials and do video tutorials for another company, and I had a very long contract with them where every single month I was doing stuff, and I did this for about 2 years, and I kept shorting the breakers on in my house because I was shooting with those like $10 halogen work lights that you use
Hmm.
for like construction. But I realized that I do actually needed to invest in like LED panels, because if I plug them into the wall, they are draw far less power, or they can be battery powered, so I can bypass those circuits altogether. So at that point, it was, I absolutely have to buy this. I
Hmm.
am getting paid to buy this. But what I didn't want to have happen is, I actually remember the very first time that they gave me a huge contract. It was a $3,000 video series, and you actually helped me research the LED panels that I own right now. But my issue with that is, I did not want to spend the whole $3,000 from that first contract on stuff. To me, that felt like gas. Whereas I knew theoretically more stuff was coming down the pipeline,
Hmm.
but what if it didn't? Back then, I bought the absolute best thing that I could, that was as cheap as possible, because we all talk about diminishing returns and that point where you start paying exponentially more for just a little bit extra. So I wanted to
Hmm.
find what is the best thing I can get while it's still only a nickel more instead of the price doubling. So that is what I ended up with. I bought a whole fleet of those LED panels that actually the case for it is right behind me there. But yeah, it definitely was of as a business owner, I had to look at my budget and I had to avoid gas. I couldn't buy the shiniest, nicest bicolor one. The one I
Hmm.
got just had gel inserts, but it was what could I afford and what would get the job done.
Yeah, price to performance. I mean, there's especially in lenses, like you mentioned, there are the standard Canon or Nikon or Sony lenses, or kind of the Tamron budget specials, although they're increasingly really nice. And then you got the Zeiss and stuff like that that's crazy expensive, and you theoretically can get kind of equivalent performance out of them, with the exception of, like you said, 5%, 1% maybe difference. And so just because you might need a, I don't know, whatever, an 85 mil lens doesn't mean you need the $10,000 85 mil lens.
That's true. When I bought an 85, I was looking at the 85 1.2 and went, ooh, it looks
Yeah.
beautiful and creamy, and I love it, and I want one. Oh, it's a couple $1,000s. I'm gonna buy the one that's $350.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, reaching that level of capability that you don't have with your current gear doesn't mean blowing your budget out of the water. It still means shopping smart, even though you are ultimately deciding to buy a new piece of gear.
So, Stuart, what is our parting advice for people who feel like they do need more gear? What's kind of a checklist that they can run down before they buy that piece of gear, and then when they actually do buy that piece of gear?
Sure. So certainly, can you get somebody to pay you to use that piece of gear? Ideally, do you have jobs lined up, more than one, to use that piece
At
of gear?
least one. I feel like
At
a
least
minimum of at least one.
At least one, but if you could do more than one from the get-go, that'd be perfect. Two, does it legitimately give you a capability that you don't currently have? If so, proceed. And then three, if you've reached those 2 points and you definitely need to buy this thing, what gives you the best performance for your dollar? Like, do you really need that one, that 85 1.2, or could you do okay with an 85 2.8 instead?
Yeah, the 1.8 was only $350, which was roughly like 1/8 of the price, something like that.
Exactly. And it
um,
gets you most of the way there.
yeah, absolutely.
Like, do you really need that last 5 to 10%, or can you do okay with the next step down?
I think the other one that I would add in would be, if you are getting creative, what can you get away with without buying this piece of gear? So I remember that I've done tutorials on how to do a really ghetto softbox made out of cardboard, tin foil, and computer paper. It looks awful, but it gets the job done. But would you ever use that on a paying client? No, please don't. They will be like, "What am I paying you for?"
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if you're just a student and you're just learning lighting, that is stuff that you probably already have in your house that you can get the job done with. But when I say being creative with what you can do, thinking about your limitations and thinking about what could I do right now that gets the job done. So I talk a lot about this photo behind me because I absolutely love it. But this photo is a monstrosity, huge photo because I did a panoramic. So I didn't buy a new camera that had a bunch of megapixels in it. I used a camera that I had on hand, and I panoramicked all of that and turned it into a monster that could be, printed full size. So that is just one example of a technique replacing buying new gear. You don't need the 80 megapixel sensor if you're shooting a thing that can be done with, several different photos stitched together.
Or
Obviously, that's more that's easier to do in studio when you're shooting cars or products, and harder to do with portraits. But it is still, think about what techniques or what things you already have that you can get away with, that the extra thing that you think you need that you probably don't.
like in the video space, stabilization is a big thing, and generally people go towards gimbals, which are awesome and super helpful and useful, and you can get amazing shots with them. But you'd be surprised what you could do with just being creative with holding a tripod. Like, if you're shooting video, you probably already have a tripod, and
Or even a monopod. There are so many things that you can do with a monopod, and guess what? If you collapse a tripod, you can do all of those same things. I've seen so many monopod hacks about how to get just a little bit of camera movement. You don't need a dolly, you don't need a steady cam. Obviously, you're not going to be able to pull off these super elaborate moves, going up and down stairs and through windows, but you can get that little bit of movement that you're looking for just from a monopod or a collapsed tripod. There's so much you can do.
And monopods are super cheap. Like, you don't even need a fancy monopod to do stuff like that. I mean, if you go on YouTube and you search for video tripod hacks, stuff like that, generally the idea is you're folding up the tripod and holding it against your body kind of out in front of you and holding onto the tripod like a stabilizer. And that allows you to walk around while still keeping your camera very stable. And it works great. I've actually done it myself many times. So sometimes the gear that you have can be adapted in a way that you might not expect to maybe not replace, but approach the capabilities of a new piece of gear.
All right, so I have a challenge for everyone that is listening to this. So normally we would ask you for ideas and feedbacks for future episodes, but for this particular one, if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and leave a comment. Otherwise, if you are listening to this on some other podcasting platform that doesn't have a comment section, go ahead and email us, hello@photo-op.show. So I want to know, what is the piece of gear that you think you need to buy, and why do you think you need to buy it? And let's just try and reply to all of these with, how can you do that thing without buying that piece of gear? So What is a piece of gear that you think you need that you probably don't need? And we can flex our creative muscles and come up with some interesting solutions for all of you people at home. Help you avoid gas, help you stay in the black, help you keep all of that hard-earned money to go towards, a trip to Tahiti instead of a new camera body.
Sounds great. I'm game for that.
If you have questions or ideas for future episodes, you can email us at hello@photo-op.show.
Watch us on Ben's YouTube channel at NomCreative.
As in Om Nom Nom.
Share this with a friend, and you can listen to Photo Op anywhere podcasts are sold.
Or download it. 'Cause it's free.